All right, I guess I will go ahead and take it away. Hey everyone, so my name is Zack. I am an associate marriage and family therapist. I work at an amazing private practice in Yorba Linda called Inspired Resolutions Counseling. Brittany is one of my supervisors. When I was 15 years old in 2010, I was in a diving accident at the beach, actually Newport Beach right here, 42nd Street, that left me paralyzed. And I was diagnosed as a C4 quadriplegic, which basically means I have paralysis in my upper and lower body. So before I kind of get into my story and share all of that with you, I wanted to open up just giving some brief background history on kind of my childhood and my past a little bit before my injury. So growing up, I was born and raised in Orange County. I grew up, going to the beach every summer. In the winter, I would go camping and I rode dirt bikes. I was a very active teen, always doing crazy physical stuff, skateboarding, surfing, dirt bikes. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, so I have 3 younger siblings, and I played the role of the older brother very well. So I picked on my siblings, always caused problems, always messing with them, and did that very well. So we didn't have the best relationship. My mom always liked to tell me that I was more work on my own than my 3 younger siblings put together. And I was a very physical person. I always, was hands-on. So I was always touching and poking and prodding and doing things that annoyed my siblings. My mom could be in her bedroom and she knew it was me who came in the door by the way the door slammed behind me. So, but yeah, I kind of had an on and off relationship with them growing up. I was very independent. I liked to do things on my own. I liked to figure things out. I didn't like asking for help. And also didn't like being told what to do. So I had a little bit of a defiant, independent side. And so that was kind of a little bit of, who I was growing up. And so in 2010, I was 15 years old, a freshman in high school, and it was Memorial Day. So it happened to be on a Monday, which meant I didn't have school, which is awesome because I did not like school. Not a very academic-minded person. And so one of my best friends, Travis, called me on that Monday morning and asked if I wanted to go down to the beach. And so being 15 years old, I, of course, didn't drive yet. So I had to ask my parents if they would give me a ride down to the beach. And them knowing Memorial Day is usually a pretty busy day at the beach and traffic is just crazy. And so they didn't want to drive me. But I was a very persistent person growing up. When I was told no, that's not where it ended. I would keep asking and I would figure out a way to get my way. And so, of course, I did that. My parents already had plans to go to a backyard barbecue at their friend's house. I did not want to go. I wanted to go to the beach with my friends, and so I figured out a way to get my way, and that was having them drop me off at my friend's house, and his mom would take us down to the beach. So they agreed to that, and on the way to my friend's house, I remember my dad having a conversation with me, just to be careful. It's really interesting because almost the exact words were, he said, "Be careful about diving. Neck injuries happen," and he didn't want me to paralyze myself. And of course, I'm half listening. The other half of my mind is just focused on getting to go to the beach with my friends, being by ourselves. There's going to be no adults there, and so we got to my friend's street, and I opened the door as he was telling me that, and I said goodbye and shut the door behind them, not knowing that was going to be the last time I would ever walk. And so my friend's mom drove us down to Newport Beach, dropped us off at 42nd Street, and we were off on our own. We met up with another group of friends there, found our spot in the sand. We had our boogie boards with us, our towels, everything we needed. Once we got everything kind of put together, we put on our sunscreen and we were off into the water. And so growing up, I've gone to the beach hundreds of times, if not thousands of times, and I boogie boarded, body surfed. So I was very familiar with the ocean. And the first time we went in the water, it was pretty cold that day, and so I kind of had that in the back of my mind. And as the day went on, 3 hours go by, we get out of the water, we come back on the sand, lay in down on our towels, and have a snack. And before I know it, the day's coming to an end, and my friend's mom calls him and lets us know she's on her way to come pick us up. So with that, we knew we had about maybe 30, 45 more minutes before we would have to leave, and so we all decided to go into the water one last time. Since I knew the water was cold in the back of my mind, I figured I'm just going to run in, dive into a wave, and just submerge my body as quick as possible and kind of just get over with. Because once you're in, you kind of forget about how cold it is, but if you kind of walk in and tiptoe, I'd rather just get over with. It's like ripping the Band-Aid off. So I got up from the sand. I had my best friend right next to me, and as I was running into the water, I felt, my toes hit the cold sand, kind of had like that chill that goes up your spine, and I saw a wave out in the water coming towards me, and I decided that was the wave I was going to dive into. Again, something I've done hundreds, if not thousands of times growing up at the beach, diving under a wave as I went out farther and farther. And so I saw the wave coming at me, put my arms out, tucked my head down, and dove right into it. And unfortunately, underneath that wave was a sandbar, which meant it was a shallow area in the ocean that kind of moves around. Sandbars move, so it wasn't that shallow earlier that day, and because of the tide, it happened to be shallow during that time, and I picked the wrong spot to dive into. I dove headfirst in the sandbar, instantly paralyzed, and I remember laying in the water and feeling like something really bad had happened, but didn't really know what it was until I went to try to get up out of the water, and I couldn't move anything. I was still fully conscious and aware. It didn't knock me out, I didn't black out or anything. I was now at that point floating face down in the ocean, fully conscious, just unable to move. I couldn't even turn my head to take a breath. And so the first thought was I didn't know what had happened. And then my mind went back to the conversation my dad had with me in the car. And the word paralyzed went into my head, and I realized, oh my gosh, I just paralyzed myself. I couldn't feel anything. I instantly lost sensation in my body. A lot of people ask me, man, that must have been so painful, and it was absolutely pain-free. The best way I can describe that feeling is kind of like when your foot falls asleep or your arm falls asleep, you get like that numb, kind of tingly feeling. That was how my whole body felt. I couldn't even feel the temperature of the water anymore. All I could basically do was lay there, face down in the water. I had all these thoughts running through my head, the fact that I just paralyzed myself at 15 years old, I'm going to die, I have so much more life to live, and I'm not able to say goodbye to my parents. I also had the thought, I knew I was a prankster growing up, I was always messing around, so I figured my friends would think I was just playing a joke, and by the time they realized something serious had happened, it would have been too late, and I would have inhaled water and drowned. And so the only thing I could do that I told myself was I'm going to hold my breath for as long as I can and hope something would happen. And as I'm laying down, I don't know how long I was face down in the water for. Thankfully, I didn't inhale water, so it was long enough to where I could hold my breath. I got this weird feeling on my back, like someone poked me. It was very faint, very subtle. I almost kind of questioned if I thought it actually happened or not. But for some reason, that kind of gave me some hope as I was floating face down. And it happened to be my buddy Travis, who dove in the water right next to me, got back up, and saw my body just floating face down in the water. In his mind, he thought I was messing around. So he ran over to me and smacked me on my back. And he didn't get a reaction out of me. He smacked me on my back, my body stayed there, I didn't flinch, nothing happened, no response. And so he thought that was kind of weird, and he's standing over my body and sees me start to float back out with the tide. And thankfully, something in his head told him that something serious had happened to me, and so he ran over and flipped me over. And I remember I went from floating face down to facing straight up into the sky where the sun was very bright, and I was able to take a breath, took a big breath of fresh air, and the next thing I know, I'm being dragged on the water by my arms. And I was probably 5'9", 5'10" my freshman year of high school. I wrestled at 170 pounds. I was a lot of muscle, so I was pretty heavy. And now I'm dead weight in the water. And my buddy Travis is probably 5'6", 5'7", 135 pounds. He was a smaller guy. And as he starts pulling me out of the water, he really can feel the weight of my body. And waves are hitting me in the face, and he's trying to keep my head above the water. I can see out of the corner of my eye my arms above my head as he's just kind of dragging my body out of the water onto the sand. And he gets me far enough onto the sand where I'm out of danger. And he looks at me like, partly like, thinks something serious happened, but hoping that I was just messing around. And by then, the other group of people I was at the beach with came out of the water and kind of crowded around me and was like, Zach, all right, stop messing around, this isn't funny, like what's going on? And I went to speak and nothing came out, my voice wasn't working. I think just because my body was in shock. But I was trying to say, I can't move, I can't move. I think I'm paralyzed, go get a lifeguard. And they are all 14, 15 years old too, just looking at me like, what's going on? And when I had dove into the sandbar and hit my head, I bit my tongue. So I had some blood coming out of my mouth. And once they saw that for them, it was like, okay, something serious had happened. And so they went and got the lifeguard. The lifeguard came over and tried talking to me. And again, I couldn't really speak very well. And I just kept repeating to myself, I can't move, I can't move. And so he went and got the lifeguard, or not the lifeguard, he went back to the lifeguard tower, called 911, and I kind of just laid there until the ambulance came. And I remember laying there and hearing I could hear the ambulance in the distance. As it got closer, it got louder. And the weird thing for me was I knew it was coming for me. And so they eventually came, put a neck brace around my neck. They lifted me onto kind of like a stretcher and put me in the back of an ambulance. I remember being in the ambulance and it being freezing cold and had the smell of the hospital. And I was off to actually Hoag. They took me here. This was the closest hospital from where I was. And they wouldn't let anybody go with me because they were all underage. So my friend Travis and all my other friends were just left, and that was it. I went to the hospital and they were left at the beach. The next thing I remember is a few days later, I woke up in the hospital. They had already done surgery on my neck, and it turned out I had completely shattered my C4 vertebrae and also sustained spinal cord damage. And so they did surgery in the front and the back. They had to pull out the broken pieces of bone in my neck and replace it with basically a dead person's C4 vertebrae. But the surgery was successful. They said everything went great. The bone fit perfectly. And so I woke up in the hospital with a tube down my throat that was helping me to breathe. And as soon as I woke up, I was trying to push it out with my tongue. And it was very uncomfortable. And the nurse came in and was like, stop doing that. I'm going to go get a doctor. The doctor comes in. He sees that I'm trying to take this out. And he looks at me and he's like, this is what's helping you breathe. So if I take this out and you're not able to breathe on your own, I'm going to have to put it back in while you're awake, and it's going to be extremely uncomfortable. So blink twice if you want me to take it out, and blink once if you want me to leave it in. And I didn't think about it, I blinked twice. So I remember him pulling this long tube out of my throat that I felt like it was never ending. I couldn't believe how far down it went. And thankfully when he took it out, I was still able to breathe on my own. But I wasn't getting enough oxygen, so they were able to just put one of those little oxygen kind of tubes that go under your nose. And after that, my parents came in, and I was able to. That was the first time I had seen them since my accident, which was a few days later. Because my injury happened on Memorial Day, there were no doctors really in the office. They weren't able to do an emergency surgery, so I actually laid in a hospital bed with a broken neck for 2 days. And they also, part of that was they couldn't do an immediate surgery because of the swelling. I had swelling in my neck, and they didn't want to do anything until the swelling went down. So that was the first time they got to see me, at least conscious and awake. And they came in, and I had a big smile on my face, and I told them that everything was going to be okay, not really knowing the severity of what had happened to me. And so the doctors kind of came in and explained the seriousness of what had happened. And what a spinal cord injury was. Being 15 years old, I didn't really know what being paralyzed meant. I knew we had a spinal cord, but what does that mean? A spinal cord injury. And so they basically told me that I had damaged my spinal cord, and in the nicest way possible, basically said you're most likely never going to walk again. And I was a very strong-minded person. And I remember hearing that and being like, yeah, okay, that's not going to be me. I'm going to be walking out of here. And so I didn't accept it right away. And I was in the hospital, in the ICU for about 2 weeks. And I had a trip planned about a month later to go visit one of my best friends in another state. And in my head, I gave myself, that's the amount of time I'm gonna need until I'm recovered, and I'm gonna be on that plane and see my best friend. And so the few weeks passed by, and I wasn't any better than I was prior. And so I was like, okay, well maybe in the next few months by my birthday, I'll be better. And so things kind of settled in over time. It wasn't something that I accepted right away, and I think in a way that really helped me slowly kind of process what had happened to me. I definitely experienced a lot of hard times, but didn't really go into severe depression or hopelessness. And I think it was because of that, because I refused to accept it until after a while. I was like, okay, this is really serious, things aren't really getting better. And after the hospital, I was transferred to a rehab facility in Pomona, where I did physical therapy and OT. I absolutely did not like OT. That was the bane of my existence, was trying to learn how to, brush my teeth, feed myself, put my own shirt on. For some reason, I prefer PT over OT. But in the rehab center, I learned to navigate a new life in a body that no longer worked. And so physical therapy was big. There was a lot of kind of hard experiences in there. One of the things that was the most challenging for me was the fact that I was such an independent person prior, and in a split second, I completely lost all of my independence. I was the type of person that probably would have had my bags packed by the front door, ready to move out on the day of my 18th birthday. And so going from being fully independent to being completely dependent on others for simple daily care was very hard for me. At 15 years old, my parents had to see me naked, they had to shower me, they had to help me go to the bathroom, they had to feed me, they had to dress me, cut my fingernails, almost anything physically you can think of, I could no longer do, and had to have someone else do that. And it was very hard having to rely on other people for things that, a few weeks ago I could do on my own. And it made me realize a lot of things that I took for granted. In a way, it was more the little things that were more harder for me, like, getting my own drink of water, or at the time, I was paralyzed from the neck down, so I couldn't move my arms or anything. So even if I had a scratch on my nose, I had to ask someone, hey, scratch my nose, go more left, up higher, scratch harder, all the way up to just dressing myself and transferring into a wheelchair. And not only did this take a toll on me, but it completely affected my family and my sibling life. So I was in rehab for about 3 months. That was as long as insurance covered, and after that, they were like, okay, it's time to go home, good luck. And during that time, thankfully, my grandpa was an architect, so he designed a wheelchair accessible bathroom in my parents' home that had a roll-in shower. And my parents had a single-story home. They had just taken out the carpet and replaced it with wood and tile, which you may not think about, but that's much better for a wheelchair than it is for carpet. And we had to install a wheelchair ramp in the backyard, so that way I can get into the house. And we had to widen the doorways, so we had to make a few accommodations to the house. And so after I was released, I went back home, and now I was left to figure out my life and figure out how to get my life back on track and to continue moving forward. So that my accident happened about 2 weeks before my freshman year ended. Thankfully, my high school was very understanding of what happened. They just passed my freshman year. They let me just move on to my sophomore year. I didn't have to make up anything. My entire sophomore year of high school, I was homeschooled. They gave me the option to take a year off, but I was very adamant about wanting to stay with my friends. I wanted to graduate with them. So I did my sophomore year homeschooled, my junior and senior year. I went back to high school just for my elective classes, so the fun ones. And I got to hang out with my friends during lunch. And after lunch, I would go home, and I would have a substitute teacher that would come and just teach me my core classes. And I was able to stay on track. And my senior year was really when I had to start thinking about my future, what I wanted to do after high school. I was a very go with the flow kind of guy. I didn't think too much into the future. And so I didn't think much past what I was going to do after high school. I figured I was going to use my physical capabilities to get a job or work for my dad. But now that that was completely taken away from me, I had to really rethink my future, and I realized if I wanted to be successful, I had to use my brain, which for some reason was harder for me to do than my physical abilities. And I ended up getting an opportunity through an organization that helped injured athletes. Thankfully, I wrestled my freshman year, so I qualified for this scholarship called Swim with Mike, which is through USC, and they help athletes who have gotten injured in any way basically go to college and to get an education so you can get a job. And after my injury, I found them, and when my senior year came around, I applied and was accepted. So now I had money to go to college, but never thought about going to college because after high school I was done with my education. But I realized, again, if I wanted to create a future for myself, this is what I had to do. So my senior year, instead of it being a fun year where I didn't have a lot of classes and enjoyed, I had to take a bunch of classes, prerequisites, in order to qualify to go straight to a 4-year. So I took about 6 or 7 classes my senior year, passed all them. The closest 4-year university near me was Cal State Fullerton. I wanted to go to a university, but I didn't want to go to one that was far away where I'd have to move into. I could still commute to this college, and my mom was my absolute rock. I could not have gone to college, finished high school if I had not had her a part of my life. She helped me with so many things, including getting that scholarship, researching Cal State Fullerton, reaching out to them, asking them if it's even possible for a quadriplegic to go to college, and what would that mean, what type of accommodations did they have. So the end of my senior year comes around, and I get an opportunity to walk in front of my entire graduating class to get my diploma using a walker and 2 of my physical therapists. At the time, I would drive all the way down to, my mom would drive me all the way down to Oceanside, where I would do physical therapy 3 times a week for 3 hours each day at a facility called Project Walk that specialized in specifically people with spinal cord injuries and TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. So we would drive down there, work out. My mom would get me up in the morning, my dad would go to work, she would get my 3 siblings ready, drop them off. At the time, they all went to different schools. She would drop them off and then drive down to Oceanside. I would work out for 3 hours, we would drive back. By the time we got back, we'd pick each of them up and we'd get back home. And by then it was 3 or 4 p.m. that day, and we did that pretty consistently for a few years. And so 2 of my physical therapists there, drove down the day of my graduation and helped me stand up in front of my entire graduating class and walk to get my diploma. It was one of the most stressful things I've ever done. I was extremely nervous, but looking back, it is one of my proudest accomplishments. I believe they asked me if I wanted to do that, and I think I waited till the 2 days before my ceremony when they were like, you need to let us know so we can prepare this or not. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I didn't want to do it, but I knew in my heart like this would be an opportunity I wouldn't get again. And so the morning of my graduation comes around, and I don't think I ate anything all morning because I had so much anxiety, butterflies in my stomach. I get to my school, and they're like, "Are you ready?" And I said, "I think so." They're like, "Great, because you're going first." So yeah, I was the first one to be called, and my therapist came. They brought the walker. I stood up. Instantly, no one had any idea that I was going to do what I was about to do. I didn't tell anyone except for my immediate family. And so I stand up, and I have one of my therapists behind me to help hold my hips and my legs, and another therapist in the front of the walker to kind of guide it. And I start taking steps, and everyone just starts standing up and cheers and is screaming, and it was an amazing experience. So I walk, I get my diploma, and graduate high school. And at the time, I only applied to Cal State Fullerton, again, kind of threw all my eggs in one basket, and got accepted. So after high school, I took that summer off and went right into the fall, I went straight into college. And so before I talk about my college experience, I have a video I would like to play for all of you.
My name's Amber Collie. I have 4 children. I have Zack, Levi, Caden, and a princess named Layla. I have an awesome family. You know, I remember telling my friends, oh my gosh, I have 4 kids at 4 schools and this is crazy. And little did I know, now that seems like nothing. Okay, it was Memorial Day, 2010. We had wanted to go to a pool and barbecue at our neighbor's house, and we told Zack. And he really wanted to go to the beach with his friends, and I felt like I gave in, like, yeah, okay, all right, fine, you know, you go. So I remember going to this pool party, and the little ones were swimming, and the barbecue was just being started, and a boy that lives there is my son Levi's age, and he came up to me and said, is Levi coming? So I went up and got my phone. I remember I noticed a voicemail message, and
we were there almost all day. We've been in the water, decided to go back out one more time. I remembered it being cold, so I decided I was just gonna run in, dive into the water, get used to it really quick. I ran to dive under a wave, hit a sandbar. I'm gonna die at 15 years old. I can't believe this happened to me. I remember being dragged. He let go of my arms. It was like they weren't even attached to my body.
the mom that drove them down there, it was her. She simply said, there's been an accident. Zack's at Hoag Hospital. You need to get down here right away. I knew it was bad. I sensed immediately this is serious. But I had no idea that it was that serious. I'm trying to dial his friend, and he says, Amber, Zack's not moving. Zack's not moving. You see in the movies, Mr. and Mrs. Collie have a seat, and he said, I won't sugarcoat it. He said, it's really bad. They had done some x-rays and an MRI, and they're waiting on the results. He had, the big neck brace on, so he could hardly look over at me, but he just smiled. And for me, that moment was, he's alive. Like, he's alive. Like, I felt like it didn't matter. Like, at that moment for me, as his mom, I just felt like it doesn't matter. Like, whatever it is, he's alive. It's like, we're gonna deal with this. If Zack can live in a body that all of a sudden doesn't work, is being as active as he used to be, like knowing who he is, if he can do it with a smile on his face, then I can do it. I can sit there and walk beside him.
I have never broken a bone in my body until I broke my neck. I grew up riding dirt bikes, surfing. I was just always outdoors. I'm always hanging out with my friends.
He is paralyzed. He lost the function of his body, and from day one, chose to move forward, and I think we kind of followed suit. It did happen. It did happen to our family, and there's nothing that can change that. But that doesn't mean he can't have a good life. It doesn't mean everything stops and we just feel sorry for ourselves and curl up in a ball and hide.
Zack can face life with those challenges and not complain. Causes me not to complain as much either.
This injury could happen to anybody. Therapy and rehab was just what we did.
When I first got hurt, I couldn't even push my wheelchair on my own. And so that was a big struggle for me because I had no freedom. I couldn't go anywhere on my own. Just like simple things you take for granted.
His legs, they shake to the point where we actually strap him down. We tie him down at night. So he is 7 to 10 hours, depending on how long he sleeps, in the same position. If he just wants to sit on the couch, what it takes to get him from his now wheelchair to the couch to the bed.
If I want something, a glass of water, to brush my teeth, I always have to wait for someone to do it for me. And sometimes that's really frustrating. One of the biggest things I've had to learn is patience. Would give anything to have my independence back, but now going to school, getting my life on the right track to get out in the world and eventually be independent on my own one day is what drives me. I'm gonna get there one day, it's just gonna take a little longer. I like to tell people I'm still the same person I was before my accident. I wanna have a family one day and live on my own, have a house. I love to go to concerts, go to the beach, I'm still me.
I get amazed and blessed to watch Zack's coping with life because it gives me inspiration.
We work a lot on upper body
in hopes of one day that I'll be able to transfer myself, like into my chair, into a seat. That's a big goal we have.
It's very important. His body gets moved, gets worked out, doesn't atrophy. There's definitely something about giving back. Just seems like the most natural thing to do.
I've grown a lot more compassionate for others too. It's made me definitely want to help more people. Don't take life for granted. Be appreciative for what you have. Never give up. Persevere.
So after high school, I ended up getting accepted to Cal State Fullerton, which was an amazing opportunity and something that I never thought I would do. I was the first person in my family to go to college and get a degree. My first few years I was undeclared because I had never planned on going to college, didn't really think about what I want to major in. And so eventually I just took all my general eds, and the school was like, okay, you know, Zach, you need to declare a major because you've taken all your general eds. And I tried a few different ones, but really didn't find one that I felt was worth pursuing. And eventually I stumbled upon a major called Human Services and took the intro to that, not really knowing what it was. I had never heard about Human Services. And after the intro class, something sparked an interest in me where I realized this is something I could see myself doing. It's a very broad major, but you know, you work with people and kind of help people. And I knew after my injury, whatever I did in life, I wanted it to be something where I could help others. I didn't know what that would be or how I would do it, but I knew that it needs to be something where I give back and something that gives me meaning. So I ended up majoring in Human Services, and my junior, maybe senior year, I took a summer class called Character and Conflict, and it was a very small class that was for students that was run by part-time professors and also part-time therapists. So it was almost free therapy for students. And each week was a different topic, but it was a class that they really made you focus on yourself and share things that were difficult. They said this class is not for everyone. There's gonna be times where you're very uncomfortable, but there's gonna be a lot of growth. And it was kind of like a warning, and I was very intrigued by that. And I thrived in that class. I think it was the first time in my life where I actually looked forward to going to school. And through that class, I kind of had the thought of, what about if I became a therapist? It's something I could do independently. It doesn't require a lot of physical abilities. I really just need my brain and my voice. And then I thought, well, given what I've gone through and what I have to deal with, you know, do I want to listen to people's problems all day? You know, being paralyzed, and I would compare my problems to other people's. And so I kind of put it back out, and I was like, you know what, I don't know if I want to do that. And then a little while later, I took another class that kind of really made me look at myself and my future and how I was going to move forward in life. And my thought process changed. I realized, boom, a light bulb went off, that's it. That's how I can get back and help other people, is through being a therapist, through sharing my story and hopefully inspiring and giving other people hope. If people can look at me and see what I've gone through and how I've handled it, then maybe they can look at whatever they're going through and be like, if he can deal with what he went through, then I can overcome whatever it is I'm going through. And so after that, I started looking up schools for a master's program, which is crazy because I never, like I said, planned on going to college. Here I am looking at master's programs, and ended up finding out that Cal State Fullerton had an amazing master's in counseling program that was nationwide. People came from all over the United States just to get into this program. It was very competitive. They get about 400 applications a year and only accept about 75. So I was kind of a little discouraged because I didn't have the best grades, but I wrote a pretty good personal statement. I got written letters of recommendation from my professors, and again, kind of threw all my eggs in one basket and just prayed for the best. And if it was meant to be, it would happen, and if it wasn't meant to be, I would just kind of figure it out. And so after a while, I finally got a letter in the mail. I opened it up, and the first words I saw were congratulations. So I was accepted into the Master's in Counseling program at Cal State Fullerton. I did that. It took me about 4 years to get my master's, 5 years to get my bachelor's. I went at a slow pace because I didn't want to overwhelm myself and fail classes and end up having to retake them. So I took my time. It took about 9 years in total to get my bachelor's and my master's, and I graduated in December of 22 with a master's in counseling with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. And after that, I realized, oh my gosh, this is it. I reached the point where I got my education. Now I'm in the big boy adult world, and it's time to get a job and start working. And so one of the things, as an associate, you can't get hired anywhere until you get your associate number in the mail. And I was waiting for my number to come. I didn't know when I was going to get it. And I had never had a job before. Since my injury, I went from high school to college to my master's program, all back to back. I didn't take any time off, so I never really had time to get a job and experience what it's like to work. And so in the meantime, while I was waiting for my associate number to come in the mail, I figured I'm just going to apply to some places, see if I get any people interested in me, practice interviewing. And I did maybe about 3 or 4 interviews, and one of them happened to be Brittany at Inspired Resolutions. And so we did a kind of a Zoom meeting online where she kind of asked me some questions, and I felt like the interview went really good. And at the end, she's like, "Okay, so do you have your associate number?" And I was like, "Oh no," I said, "I actually don't." And I was really nervous because I was worried that that would be kind of a deal breaker. And thankfully it wasn't. She told me to reach back out to her once I got my number, and we can just kind of see, go from there. And so I got my number in the mail a few weeks later. I instantly emailed her as soon as I got it. I was very excited about this opportunity, working in a private practice. I got to talk with Brandon, the owner, and just felt really excited about it. And the fact that it was less than a mile from where I lived, which I did not know. I'd always heard the saying, location, location, location. And now I can leave for work and get there in less than 10 minutes, which is amazing. And so then they invited me to the facility and had me sit in on a group that they run every Monday. I sat in and kind of observed how Brandon works. And at the end of it, they kind of asked me, my thoughts, and then offered me the job. And so I took it. And I've been there for a little over a year now. And so some things that I have got to experience that I never thought I would after my injury was in the video. I don't know if you saw, but I got a service dog, an amazing yellow lab. Her name is Sedona. She's not here right now. She's living with my parents. She's actually retired now, so she's a lot older, but she lives with them, and that's something I got because of my situation that I would have never experienced. And Sedona completely changed my life. She went to college with me. I always like to joke that she also has a bachelor's in human services because I took her to all my classes. When I graduated from Cal State Fullerton, I had a custom dog graduation gown made, and I put her in it with a little hat and everything. So she went up with me on stage to receive it. She went to a few of my master's program classes, and then she kind of I leave her with my parents. And through an organization called Department of Rehabilitation, called DOR, they are a state organization that also helps people with disabilities go to college to get an education, to get a job and be independent. And through that, they help me pay to get a car with hand controls. I really believed after my injury that I would never be able to drive again, just because of the severity of my physical limitations. I didn't know that was even an option. And through them, and through a very special situation, I had qualified to apply to get a car paid for, get hand controls paid for, and learn to drive again. And it was about a 3-year process. And I've been driving for about 4 or 5 years now, and that in itself has completely changed my life as far as gaining back that independence that I lost. I'm now living on my own. I have an apartment where I have a caregiver that comes in the morning, gets me up, gets me dressed like this. Once I'm like this, I'm pretty independent throughout the day, and he comes at night and puts me to bed. And again, being able to move out of my parents' house into my own apartment was something I never really thought I'd be able to do again. And I'm also happy to announce last October I got married, which another thing I struggled with early on with my injury was a lot of insecurity, trying to believe that I would still be able to find someone that could look past my situation and love me for who I am. Did a lot of online dating, had some success, and which kind of made me realize, what, there are people out there that can look past your disability, your situation, and still find that true love. And I'm happy to announce that I found that. I got married. We are living together, and I also became a stepdad to an amazing 7-year-old daughter. And that was actually a picture of her at the end of the video that popped up. Recently, she had a loose tooth, and she lost a few teeth before that, and every time I was like, I wanted to tie a string to it and then tie it to my chair and yank it out. But she didn't want to do it, and then one random morning, her tooth was about to fall out, and she wanted to do it, so we recorded it and made a little YouTube video on it. She's very, very brave. We get along hand in hand. And now I'm working independently as an associate marriage and family therapist at Inspired Resolutions, and everything that I've worked so hard for has all just kind of come together, all in very close time. It was kind of like boom, 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 moved out, started driving, graduated, started working, dated, got married, all these things that I wanted for myself that I didn't know what happened came together. And I've learned a lot of lessons over these past almost 14 years. It'll be 14 years since my injury at the end of next month. And in the video I talked about one of the biggest things I learned was patience. I was not a patient person growing up. When I would always have to be doing something, and when I was doing something, I had to have something planned after that I could look forward to. My parents told me a story when I was younger. I was at Disneyland, which was a great thing to do. And I went up and asked them, what are we doing after this? And they looked at me funny, like, are you serious? This is what we're doing. So I was always active. I was always doing something. My mind is always, I always had to have something I was looking forward to. And kind of losing my physical ability, it really taught me to kind of slow down, be in the present, and be patient. Through my injury, it really strengthened my relationship that I had with my family and my siblings. It brought us a lot closer together. I was no longer that older physical brother that was picking on my siblings. And at the time, I believe my sister was about 5 years old, and she told me to be careful now because they could beat me up. I could no longer defend myself. It was almost like our relationship did a complete 180, and I think that's one of the things I'm most grateful for. That happened because of my injury is now the relationship that I have with my family. And this might sound also weird, but my injury gave my life purpose and meaning that I didn't have before. And I think that's been a big reason why I've been able to have the attitude I have and not let my situation define my attitude and not let my circumstances dictate my future. Is through this I have found meaning and purpose that I didn't have before, and I believe I have a purpose that's bigger than myself. I've also learned to focus on the things I can control. It was really easy for me to look at everything I lost, which was a lot, and it was a lot harder for me to really focus on the little things that I still had. But by doing that, it really made me realize what I'm still grateful for rather than what I lost. And also taught me to be resilient, to have that mind of persevering and overcoming challenges that are going to come in life. There's just so many lessons I could talk a lot longer, but it helped me to turn into a person that I love and am proud of. I know I was only 15 years old, so I didn't have a whole lot of direction in life, but I have no idea where I would have ended if my injury didn't happen, but it definitely would have not led me here today to be able to share my story in front of all of you. And I found that the trials and tribulations that I've gone through in life have made me a stronger person. So I want to emphasize not to let our circumstances dictate our attitude. Our attitude is something that can never be taken away from us. A good attitude will give you good results, bad attitude, bad results. And so I will end on this. When I was in high school, I was sitting in, this was after my injury, I was probably junior or senior. I was sitting in my history class, half paying attention, half looking at the clock, counting down the minutes until this class was over. Didn't pay a whole lot of attention in class, but for some reason, this time I was, and I'm forever grateful because my high school history teacher said 3 words that have stuck with me ever since. And these are words that I go to whenever I'm struggling or having a hard time or going through a difficult season in life that have become kind of a life motto. And those words were improvise, adapt, and overcome. So, thank you. So yeah, I think now we can just open it up for some questions or yes. Thank you for all coming here and allowing me to share my story. I really feel like what I've been through, part of my purpose is to share what I've gone, just to inspire people, to give them hope. Because I can think back to before my injury, all the things that I would get caught up on or get stressed out over that I realized, why am I giving this a lot of my time? I can't do this. Why am I, talking down on myself or telling myself I can't do this when I really can? And it really showed me I didn't believe I was smart enough to go to college, and that was part of the reason why I never planned on it, because I didn't think I could get in, and let alone afford it. And now I got a master's degree, and I proved myself wrong. So never put a limit on yourself. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, when I was first injured, I was paralyzed from the neck down. Over time and through rehab, your body will slowly get back function. The doctors say within the first year of your injury, you'll get back some function and some sensation. And that they say that year is very crucial to work out as much as you can, do as much PT, because your body is still healing. And eventually I got the use of my arms. I don't have any use of my wrist or my fingers. Those are still completely paralyzed. But I can move my arms. I was able to get physical sensation back. But a lot of people, they can see the obvious, the physical part of what I lost, but not the sensation or even the paralysis of bowel and bladder issues. So some of that I got back, some of that I didn't. As far as getting any better, I still work out. I really try to keep my body healthy as I can. So when something does come out in the future, I'll still be in a healthy shape. But as of right now, the best I can do is just continue physical therapy. Standing is important. Just keeping my body as healthy as possible. And I focus a lot more on physical therapy prior to working. Now working has been a big part of my life, and I've kind of had to transition. Now that I'm living on my own and I'm in the adult world, I got bills to pay and stuff. So, but I love what I do, and I'm really happy with where I've gotten. We have a bunch of different groups we run at Inspired Resolutions. I am in the process of starting a group therapy for people that have gone through any type of physical trauma. Going through grad school, I am getting a degree in counseling and being a therapist with a disability. I feel like I'm in a very special position. When I was injured, I did not want to go to therapy because I knew that the therapist couldn't relate to what I was going through. And I couldn't find any therapist that had a disability or that had a spinal cord injury. And now that I'm in that position, I feel like I'm in a unique opportunity where I can offer services to people with physical disabilities if they are interested, and them knowing that I can have some type of understanding of what they may be going through. And I feel like that would motivate some people to seek mental health services if they want. And I know for me, that was the barrier for me. I didn't want to talk to someone that couldn't understand what I was going through. So it's been on my heart to try and start a group and to try to target this population and offer services for whoever is interested. That you may not connect with every therapist. There's a lot of us, but there's a lot of different types of therapists, and I think also timing is really important. I see a lot of teens, and part of them are forced to be there, don't want to be there, and the clients that do show up that want to be there end up getting the most out of it. They had the name has changed since then, but they call it the DSS office, I think Disabled Student Services, where, so like if I need to take a test, they would give me a scribe that would help bubble in the dots or fill out my answers for me. I would get extra time. They had really cool note-taking paper because I couldn't take notes. So each class I would ask someone to help take notes for me. And it was 2 pieces of paper that would stick together, and they would take notes, and the notes would bleed through to a second page. So we just rip it in half, and they would keep one and I would keep one. So I had an amazing, amazing experience at Cal State Fullerton as far as them accommodating my needs. It's a very flat campus. I never had issues with any professors. I had a really just good experience as far as them accommodating and understanding, and them letting me know to let them know what I need, figure out how we can make it happen. So yeah, it was a very, very positive experience. I would much rather live the way I live now than them having to go visit my gravestone every May 31st. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm still with them, and I got to see my siblings grow up. I'm not special. I feel like if I can do it, then anyone else can do it. I wasn't born with a special superpower. This was stuff I learned, and I really realized the power we have in ourselves to overcome whatever challenges we may be going through in our life. Thank you all for listening to me talk and showing up and giving me your time. I appreciate it. I had a really fun time.